If we're using a service like Escrow.com, I normally will forego the contract because the terms and conditions on Escrow.com are typically very adequate in closing a transaction. If the transaction occurs at a higher price point, i.e. something over 6 digits, typically we will use a paper contract. At the end of the day, it's up to buyer and seller if they wish to use a paper contract in a transaction. If they choose to use one, we'll handle all of those red lines back and forth and discussion points as it relates to any terms in that agreement. Once the red lines are all completed, both parties will execute the agreement. The broker will then be able to execute and set up the transaction at the preferred escrow provider. Once the transaction is set up at escrow and all parties are verified, both parties would then agree to the terms of that transaction. The buyer would then choose a payment method and fund the payment. Once the payment has been confirmed by escrow, the seller would then be prompted to transfer that domain name. That's where the broker comes in and helps facilitate that transfer. The broker will set up the transaction at the escrow provider and handle all of the communication back and forth as it relates to the transfer of the domain name and release of the funds into the preferred account. At that point, the buyer would then confirm that they have control of the domain name in their preferred registrar account and release the funds, and then all parties, the transaction is completed. In some instances, paper contracts are then distributed to all parties with the execution contract so that they have copies for their records, and the transaction is completed and we're ready to move on to the next one.